Story time with Mr. Lamada. He will be starting soon. Oh, story time with Mr. Lamada, where all your dreams come true. Oh, he brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't live lonely, won't you start all reading? I just can't wait to be hearing story time with Mr. Lamada. He will be starting soon. Oh, story time with Mr. Lamada, where all your dreams come true. Oh, he brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't leave lonely, won't you start all reading? I just can't wait to be hearing.
Good morning, and welcome to Storytime. Thank you so much for joining me. Happy Thursday, wherever you are. Yes, thank you so much for being here with us and taking the time to spend with us here this morning. It might be evening for you, or you might be joining us later on for the recordings. Well, thank you for being here. Please remember to leave us a message as always. Let us know you were here so we can say hi to you and yours. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. And as you know, today we do have an amazing guest with us, and of course, wonderful books to talk about. And of course, one that we'll be reading today is The Chicken with Pink Toes. Join in for this one. We're joined by Edward Picot, and this one is illustrated by Mollie Macgregor-Kinnis. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Excited to share this one with you. Excited to be in conversation with Edward, and of course, to learn a little bit more about his process and of course, the inspiration behind all these amazing books. Thank you so much for joining in today, and I am glad that you are here with us. And of course, like I've mentioned, we have a great lineup this week. We kicked off with Bathe the Cat, and then of course we came through with One of a Kind Like Me, and then we had of course They Call Me Mix yesterday. Today we're here with The Chicken with Pink Toes, and of course tomorrow we're joined by Jerome Pumphrey and then also Monica Weslowska when they bring in Albert in the Air. So come on out and join us. And of course, we continue to highlight every member of our community and to celebrate them as well. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. And today, our amazing guest has this amazing lineup of books, and we'll be getting into details of that. So thank you so much for being here with us on Storytime. But before we bring on our guests, let us see who is with us this morning, ready to enjoy a wonderful story and, of course, a wonderful community with Edward. Thank you so much for being here with us on Storytime. Good morning to you. How are you doing today, Kathy? And of course, Luna out in Ohio. Thank you so much for joining in today. I hope that you're staying well. I hope that you're staying safe from the smoke that has been coming in from the fires in on the east, of course. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime today, and we hope that you're well. We hope that the air clears up very, very soon. Luna, one more time, and of course, Kathy, thank you for joining us out in Ohio. Good morning to you, Ari, and of course, Megan out there in Kentucky. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Good morning to you. Glad you are here with us. Thank you for being here. And of course, please don't forget to send us your recommendations, books that you love and all that you've heard about, and we'll do our best to bring them here to Storytime. Permissions granting, of course. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Ari and Megan, good morning to you. Nathan and Sarah in Muggy, but Clara, Illinois today. We'll take that. Clearing away a little bit. Smoke is going away. Thank you so much for joining in. And of course, Amanda West, good morning to you as well. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. And right here in Oakland, good morning to you, Soraya. And of course, Sharon Lungo, thank you so much for being here. Happy Thursday to you. glad you could be here with us live on Storytime. I hope that summer camps and everything else, summer is going well. Hopefully there's some ice cream in there as well. Thank you so much for joining in, and I'm glad that we are here together. Oh my goodness. Good morning to you, Mr. Ramos. Thank you so much for joining us out in the St. Louis. Thank you so much for joining in. Oh, it is well. It is well indeed. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. You know, if you start the morning with a good book, good conversation, what more could we ask? Good community, what more could we ask for? Thank you so much for joining in, and I hope that you are well. Thank you so much for joining us on Storytime out there in St. Louis. And I will be sure to let you know too when I'm out in St. Louis, because I do have family out there and do pop in a little bit every now and then. So be sure to let you know next time I'm around. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime, and welcome. At this point, please join me in welcoming to Storytime Edward Picot, joining us all the way out in England today. Thank you so much for being here with us. Welcome to Storytime.
Hi. Good morning. Thank you very much for having me, and hello to everybody that's watching online.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, good to have you here with us.
Well, it's very nice to be here, and it's been rainy today, I'm afraid, in my part of England, which is Kent, down in the southeast corner. But I gather from what you were saying from the comments that you've got some issues with smoke and fires out there. So
yeah, there's been, especially on the East Coast, because the wildfires out in Canada, and the smoke is coming down into New York, and now spreading. Last I saw on the news, of course, after I think Nathan and Sarah had put up a comment, and so I was looking at it yesterday too, and just got to see that part of the Midwest too, you know, Illinois and Ohio, all those places too had been affected. So I have been affected. So yeah, definitely. But on the West Coast, I mean, we've had it with the past years for sure. It's been, and this year, I know we're just getting into fire season, but right now it's still clear. So take that. But yeah, no rain. No rain.
Well, you could probably use some of the. We'll send you some of the rain from over here.
No, you can keep your rain.
We've got some to spare.
I think our reservoirs are finally up to capacity and stuff. So yeah, but I think it's been a drought for over almost three years here in Canada. Yeah, but we got rain last year. Of course, that comes with its own problems.
Yes, of course it does. Yeah, I've got a friend called Joel Wisehouse who lives in the Santa Barbara area, and I think he was quite close to some of the fires a couple of years ago when there were a lot of wildfires.
There were definitely some in the mountains close to there for sure. Wow. That's I'm glad they are okay, and Santa Barbara not too far from us, not too far away. So please tell us a little bit more. What is something, if somebody were to come to Kent, what is something that they could do, or what is something to look forward to?
Well, Kent's known as the Garden of England, so it's got lots of.
For a moment, I thought you were going to say the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, well, maybe it's not quite that nice. It's quite nice, but it's called the Garden of England because it's famous for its apple orchards and soft fruit and orchards of all kinds. And it's probably not got as much of that as it used to have, but it's still it's nice countryside, and it's got some interesting towns. We're quite close to Canterbury, which has got a lovely cathedral, of course, and we're also quite close to the coast. You've got places like Hastings and Margate, so nice little coastal towns where you can go and do a bit of bathing, get some nice seafood, eat some fish and some crabs, get a nice ice cream. So it's an interesting area. It's a nice place to live, actually.
Yeah. Oh no, that's so good. That's so good. So definitely, jotting that down as well for whenever I visit.
Whenever you're out this way, look me up. We'll go and get some chips in Hastings.
Yes, there we go. Exactly. But today, before we get deeper into conversation, I know that you have a wonderful book that you're reading with us today.
Yes.
The Chicken with Pink Toes. So just tell us a little bit about the inspiration of this book, and then we'll get into the reading. Of course.
Okay. Well, actually, it's got my name on the front, and it's got Mollie's name on the front. Mollie Macgregor-Kinnis. I'm just trying to get it in the right place. And actually, Mollie was she didn't do the illustrations. I did the illustrations.
Oh,
but,
okay.
But Mollie gave me the idea for the whole book. So she's got her name on quite a lot of my books.
Yeah.
And sometimes she's done little drawings and pictures and things that have given me the idea and ended up in the book. Sometimes she's given me the ideas and sort of and I've discussed the whole thing with her as I've gone along and shown her all the pictures as I've done them and everything. And
so I have the wrong person on the show. The brains behind it all is Mollie.
It's all Mollie. It's all
Mollie right now.
Yeah, she'll be watching a recording of this. She's at work this afternoon, but she'll be watching a recording of this. And if we don't give her all the credit, she'll be very cross.
Well, Mollie, we give you all the credit, Mollie.
That's
Thank
right.
You.
So I don't know whether chicken keeping is a big thing in your part of the world, but quite a lot of people in this, because we're quite sort of rural in areas of Kent. Quite a lot of people actually keep chickens as a, not as pets, but for the eggs and as a sort of semi-farm sort of thing.
Yeah.
And Mollie and her family used to keep chickens when Mollie was little.
Yeah.
And I was asking her about, what were you like when you were a kid? And she said she was a bit of a tomboy, but she did go out into her backyard and she had a favourite chicken called Pippa, and she painted Pippa's toes pink. Yeah. So that was where this story came from, really, her reminiscence. So
no, I love that. I love that. There's definitely been growing up in Zambia, chickens where we kept chickens for eggs to eat, and at times I feel like maybe with my mom, at times I felt like, especially when there were because you kept either you had the the kind of like the engineered ones, the ones that grow quicker, within 8 weeks they're ready, right? But we also had what we called the African chicken, which was just the one that just wandered and just grew naturally. And at times I felt like she just kept that for the numbers.
Yes.
Because it was just like you never ate them, you never touched them, eggs maybe, but then they were just there, they'll just be expanding and just be like, oh, I have this many chickens.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. But then being in Oakland and just in the Bay Area in general, I've seen a few people keeping in the backyard, the chicken coops and stuff. It kind of seems like there's a sort of like movement, kind of like a hippie style kind of keeping stuff. So it's been interesting.
A bit of self-sufficiency.
And then people going to organic towards more organic, natural stuff. So there's been a lot of that. You kind of see it. A few friends, a few kids having teaching. So talking to a lot of families, you get to see a few of them having chickens at their homes. It's
nice to have animals around, and of course, from the picture book point of view, books to do with animals are always nice subject matter. Anything to do with dogs or cats or any kind of animal is always interesting, because we're always, especially when we're kids, I think we're very interested to think about, what's it like being an animal? What's the thought process of an animal? What's their life like? So you get very, very involved in animals as a kid. I can remember I did when I was a boy, sort of thing. I was always very interested in, how animals live their lives and what they thought about things. So
that is really interesting. Yeah. Well, I know you have a book to read with us, and then we'll come back and talk about all the other things too. All yours from now, and then we'll be back. I'll be back with everybody else
after I finish reading. Okay. All right. Okay.
I love you. Like before we start reading, I love that there's a conversation going on with Ari and his grandmother in the comments. It's like, good to see you again. Like, I don't get to see. We only get to see Mr. Limata because Kathy's in Ohio and Ari's in Kentucky, and it's like,
I see people who know each
other. There's a whole conversation going on in there. I love it.
That's
all
lovely.
Right. All yours, Edward.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll stop talking to each other and listen properly to the book. Okay, so here we go. So it's called The Chicken with Pink Toes. I'm just trying to get it at the right angle so you can see it nicely. So I'm not very expert at this, so you'll have to bear with me. So The Chicken with Pink Toes, and as I say, this is all about a little girl whose family keep chickens. So it says, Let's see if I can get that
Oh,
picture.
you're
That's
making a
the way
mess
to
of
do it.
this, Edward.
Yeah, okay. So it says Pippa the chicken was snoozing in the backyard one day. So there she is having a nice snooze. And it says, when Polly, the girl who lived in the house, came and painted her toes bright pink. So hang on, there she is. She's got her box of paints and she's painting Pippa's toes bright pink. Goodness, said the other chickens. Look at your toes. I know, said Pippa. Aren't they pretty? And look, she's really proud of her toes. And one of those other chickens is staring at them a bit suspiciously. I think she might be a bit jealous of Pippa's pink toes. So, I don't think I'd better stay out here in the yard, said Pippa. My toes might get dirty. I'd better go indoors. And she marched into the house. Off she goes. Those are the back steps. Oh, see if I can get the right. Mercy, said Polly's mum. What's that chicken doing in here? And why's she got pink toes? Can she stay for tea? Said Polly. Well, all right, said her mum, but she can't live here all the time. Here we are. Let's just give you a picture. There's Pippa. She's got up on the tea table. And there's a cat there, astounded. There's Mollie, Polly's mum in the background. And I don't know whether you can see that cake down the bottom on the plate.
Yeah.
I'm not, and that's called Battenberg cake. I don't know whether you have that in the USA, but that's a fancy tea time cake that we have here in England. And unfortunately, somebody has pecked some holes in it. So I think Pepper's been helping herself to some of that cake. So, can Pippa come up to bed with me? Said Polly at bedtime. Well, okay, said her mum, but only for tonight. So there you are. There's Polly sleeping in bed, and there's Pippa on the pillow next to her. That wouldn't be a very good night's sleep, I shouldn't think, having a chicken in the same bed. You're not taking that chicken to school, are you? Said Polly's mum the next day. Yes, said Polly, it's show and tell. Whatever next, said Polly's mum. Here, take an umbrella. I think it's going to rain. So there they are, setting off. There's Pippa. And Polly's got a great big colourful umbrella that she's going to carry. Oop, I've skipped a page there. Here we are. Pippa was the undisputed star of show and tell. She sashayed up and down the class, showing off her pink toes for all to see. Let's see if I can get a nice picture of her sashaying. There she is. And I'm not sure if the kids in school quite know what to make of this. Polly is really pleased with throwing her arms up in the air, but the others look a bit astonished. And then she astounded everyone at the end of her performance by laying an egg. I think she astounded herself as well. Suddenly an egg popped out. Nope. It was raining at home time. Come on, said Polly, let's jump in puddles. There they are, jumping in puddles. Now, Polly has got the right gear on for jumping in puddles. She's got a nice pair of yellow boots on. She's got a nice waterproof yellow coat. And she's got that lovely umbrella. But what about Pippa? Chickens don't normally go jumping in puddles, do they? It says, so they did. Splosh! There she is. Splosh! Can you see there's a bit of pink in the water there? I'll tilt that up a bit better. "Oh dear," said Polly, "that puddle's washed all the pink off your toes. What a shame." And there she is, look. She's looking a bit bedraggled, isn't she? And all the pink has washed off her toes. "What was it like in the house?" said the other chickens when Pippa got home. "Lovely," said Pippa. "And I went to school as well." "Oh, fancy," said the chickens. There's that one, look, who was staring at her toes suspiciously before, still staring at them now, just to make sure all the pink's gone. "Oh, well," said Pippa, "back to normal now." And they all traipsed into the hen house together. And they're going up the stair into the hen house. Well, the next day, Polly took her paints out to the back field. There she is. She's got her box of paints again. And painted the bull's horns pink. There's the bull. I don't know whether you know that's called an Aberdeen Angus, that kind of hairy bull that we get. That comes from Scotland, and he's kind of looking sideways to see what's happening to his horns, and he's having them painted pink. And that must be the start of a whole other story, because that's the
Oh, thank you so much. That was beautiful. Thank you.
Terribly difficult to. I kept going in the wrong direction with the book and everything. Terribly difficult to get it held up right. You're much better at that than I am. But...
No, it's just it is. I mean, it's been a few years now of trying
practice.
Yeah. So thank you for being here and doing that for us. And I noticed that we have Polly. So was that a play on Mollie?
Yeah, and but Pippa was the real name of Mollie's chicken, I think. So,
yeah,
so it's quite nice for them to have names that both start with "per" like that. Isn't it? Makes them a nice pair.
I love it. And so when did you start writing?
Oh well, I used to. When I was always kind of into making up stories when I was a school child, really. Yeah. I started doing little stories and little pictures to go with them.
Yeah.
And so I've been kind of writing and drawing, I guess, all my life, really, on and off.
Yeah.
I was doing. I did little sort of animations and things online for a while. So I spent a while doing puppet animations and things. And then I came back to doing stuff for kids, really, being the last sort of really when Mollie started working at the surgery. She set me off, and we started sort of making up these funny stories together. Yeah. And I've been doing those for about sort of I guess sort of 5-6 years now. I've been doing children's picture books.
Yeah. And are there any that you've taken from what you had made up as a child, or the ones that you had worked on earlier? Are there any ones that have come into to become the books that we see now? Because you have 4 out, right?
Yeah. Well, I've got about 12 out.
Oh,
but, but so the ones the 4 that you've got there.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of the stuff that actually it's not a particularly good example, any of these ones, but quite a lot of the stuff is based on my son Ray. There was I've just been doing like a comic book called Frog Almighty, and I'll show you Frog Almighty.
Yeah.
Here we are. That's one of the Frog Almighty books, Frog Almighty and the Glass Pot.
Yeah.
So this is and this is based on a sort of story stroke game that I had with Ray when Ray was little, and it was using all the ornaments on our living room windowsill. Yeah. So when Ray was little, the way that we used to play together was Ray used to mess around with things and say, "Be him, do his voice." And, this is Frog Almighty.
Oh,
so this is the what started the whole thing. So Ray decided that this character was called Frog Almighty, and we had a couple of pottery birds, a couple of geese, and a couple of little chicks,
Yeah.
and a glass penguin, and Ray kind of decided that the glass penguin was Frog Almighty's servant, and the goose and the two chicks would go and see Frog Almighty. So that was how that story started. So that so stories that kind of evolve out of just funny ideas that you get at work, or the games that you play with your kids and stuff like that. That's a lot of my inspiration comes from that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I guess that was going to be my next question too, is in how about having kids and how that might have influenced your writing, or your creativity from your previous imagining.
Definitely Ray. That was when I was playing with Ray, that then every lots of what I did was very influenced by the games that I was playing with Ray and stories that we were making up together, and a lot of that fed through into and still does. I'm still using those ideas. But so previously I was more into sort of not exactly serious novel writing, because I like to make things funny when I can, but more sort of grown up.
You could do a Bill Bryson.
Yeah.
Sort of.
That would be nice. Yes, that would be nice. I'd take a cut of his money anytime. That would be lovely.
All right, so I feel like Mr. Remus was looking at my notes over here, but he has a question for you, and is saying, are there any specific authors of books that have influenced your writing? And I guess in this, I'll add on to that too. Have there been specifically children's book authors, picture book authors, and are there any just authors of novels and other things that have influenced you?
Yeah, well, my influence is a lot of the stuff that I'm really interested in is like animation and sort of children's television programs and things. We were talking about this the other day. And there's a couple of guys called Oliver Postgate and Peter Firmin who made lots of little animations that I grew up with as a kid. And you might not know all that well in the USA, but there's one called The Clangers, which is still going now, actually. And there's ones called Ivor the Engine, which was about a little steam engine, and there's from Wales, and there's one called Noggin the Nog, which is all about these Norsemen. So those had a big influence on me. As far as the sort, I suppose the classic stories like Beatrix Potter, the Tale of Peter Rabbit, and I grew up with all that stuff. And then the ones that I like more recently, I'm very keen on John Klassen. John Klassen, who's the guy who did Where's My Hat, and a whole series of books about people who've lost their hats. So I like his sense of humor, very dry, and I like his drawings as well. I
just received his new one, The Skull.
Yes,
it's a really good one too. Or John Klassen for sure.
Yes, I like John Klassen. Yes, and we've got to go. There are various. Do you know The Tiger Who Came to Tea? Which is a children's book. Judith Kerr is the name of the author that wrote it.
I think I know that one.
Oh, that's a lovely one.
Came to Tea.
Yeah, the Tiger Who Came to Tea. So it's all about this little girl and her mum are sitting down to have tea one day, and there's a knock at the door, and this great big tiger comes in, and he eats all the cakes and drinks all the water out the tap, and he basically eats them out of house and home, and then disappears again. So when the dad comes home from work, there's nothing for him to eat or drink in the house, and they have to go out for supper, sort of thing. It's a lovely story. It's really lovely. And she and there's a guy called so there's a book that I love that we used to read together with Ray all the time when he was little, called Mr. Gumpy's Outing. Have you ever heard of that one?
No.
That's I've forgotten his name now. John. I used to have it over here. It'll come to me. But he's a great author.
Yeah. Is he also British?
Yes, he is. Yeah.
Okay.
And what I like about his style is that his sort of style of drawing and painting is very deceptive, because you think it's quite kind of rough and ready. He doesn't try to make it look too polished, and you think it looks as if he's just kind of thrown it together, but actually he's a really good artist. And Mr. Gumpy's Outing has got beautiful pictures in it, and that's got that's got just a nice, simple, funny story. So Mr. Gumpy and these two kids, a girl and a boy, are going out for a boat ride, and all these different animals turn up and want to see if they can join in on the outing. So a rabbit says, "Can I come, please, Mr. Gumpy?" And he says, "All right, as long as you don't hop around." And then a chicken turns up and says, "Oh, can I come, Mr. Gumpy?" "Yes, all right, as long as you don't flap." And then a cow turns up and he said, "Can I come, Mr. Gumpy?" "Yes, but don't trample." And so they all get in there. There's more of them than that. There's about a dozen of them get into the boat. And once they're all in the boat, they all start doing the things he's told them not to do. The chicken started to flap. The rabbit started to hop around. The dog chased the cat. The cat chased the dog. And the boat tips over and they all end up in the drink. So, and then they have to walk home across the field. So it's a great, funny story.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. And I know too that, I mean, you mentioned, like the animals and growing up and, being in a rural, more, setting and that influencing. I see that, there's animals in your books as well. Yeah. And of course, you mentioned the characters that you and Ray would play with. But just thinking too, what else in your, in growing up in your area has influenced your writing?
Well, we were talking about one of my other books, Pilchards, which is about this carrot that's being bullied by two potatoes. Yeah. So that's right, Kevin the carrot. So he's out for a nice walk, smiling away to himself, and all of a sudden these two potatoes "Oi, Pilchards!" start shouting at him like that. And it's a funny book about teasing, basically. So it's very light-hearted, but in it, they're at the end, the two spuds get mashed, and Kevin ends up with a prize from the horticultural show. So there's an element of class in it. So Kevin's the nice kind of middle class boy who goes home, and his mum makes him this very old fashioned tea of pilchards on toast, which is why they're calling him Pilchards and making fun of him. But and the spuds come from a lower class background, so which is why they're teasing him. And there's a slight sort of class antagonism in there. And
so if you were able to have Pilchards, then you were.
Yeah, not necessarily. It's just the old-fashionedness of it. I think, that makes it seem a little bit middle class sort of thing. But I suppose that's a little bit of it. There's a bit of social observation that comes into my stuff as well. That there's kind of about class differences and things like that.
So interesting. No, it's thank you for sharing that little bit too. And I know too, even just growing up myself, we did have a few times where people would talk about whether what you ate or how you spoke while you did things, and those could lead into kids being teased or or them teasing others. And so really, really important bit. And I know that you mentioned that you're an advocate for just even say books like this, talking about bullying, against bullying. And then I know that you also have another book which I don't have here with me, but you do have. Let me just see if I can bring it up really quickly. But I know that you do have
this one here you're talking about.
Yes, I'm a parsnip.
I'm a parsnip. Yes.
Yeah. So would you want to tell us a little bit more about that one?
Well, so that's about, it's a book about the transgender experience. So again, light-hearted, funny, and Penny the carrot is she decides that actually she's a parsnip. So she has to go through, and it's about the process, really. It's not about the wrongs and rights of deciding you're this or deciding you're that. Right. But it's about she spent a lot of time thinking things over in her room, and then it's about how you tell your parents and things. So she gives a letter to her mum that says, actually, no, I'm not a carrot, I'm a parsnip. And when she reads it, she bursts into tears, and then the mum gives the letter to the dad, and when he reads it, he's equally taken aback, and he says, "Gadzooks!" like that. And then so anyway, she has to go through this whole process, telling her friends, and then waiting ages and ages, filling out forms, and then going to have an interview with a psychologist. And in the meantime, she has to when she goes out, she has to do herself up like a parsnip, And even though she does herself up like a parsnip, we're back to the two naughty spuds teasing her. She feels as if everyone's judging her and they're shouting, "Oi, carrot!" Even though she's done herself up as a parsnip. And then in the end, she has this transformative procedure, kerzoink, which of course isn't how it happens in real life. But and she goes, "Luckily, the procedure was a complete success." All right, and she's a parsnip. Aww. And she can carry on with the life in the identity that she wanted to have.
Right.
So it's not about, as I say, it's what I wanted to focus on. So was not the kind of the rights and wrongs of whether you ought to change from this to that or any of that. It was because I'd seen people go through this process, and it is a process. I wanted to focus on the process. You've made up your mind. This is what you want to do, and I really admire people who make up their mind and kind of go through this whole thing, because it is
living their truth, living your truth.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of guts, I think, to do it and go through this whole transformation.
Right,
some heavy surgery involved, and lots of telling people, and it's a big thing. And it's
and living in societies where there's an expected way, and getting so much, whether pushback and just bullying and all those things that come so definitely, I appreciate you putting this book out, because I think it is needed. And like you mentioned too, just talking about that process as you're going through just now, talking about some of kind of summarizing the book, I'm learning a lot, like just even from that and thinking about it. And there's a book that I read, actually have a copy here. It's called 500 stories, 500 coming out stories. And it's just so interesting to see the wide range of coming out stories, and how, people shared, and how some were banished from their families, or, so on and so on. And how some, would share, and the families would be like, "We've known, and we're here to support you." And so just all the different range, but just looking at, I hope we get to a world where people are more supportive and for others. Yeah.
But even if you're in a supportive family, then you still have to kind of find the courage to say to people, you've been thinking I am this, and actually I'm that. And I want to live my life a different way. Right. So it is, so there is a lot of kind of soul searching and deciding how you're going to do it. How am I going to say this? How am I going to break this news? So, like I say, it's and then if you need sort of transformative surgery, then there's a great big wait and a whole sort of filling out forms and being interviewed and all sorts of things that you have to So it's a real big thing, and I really admire the people who make that decision and follow it through, and
Right. No. Thank you for highlighting that, for sharing that piece as well. And I hope that stories like this continue to be shared and spread, and so more people can have access to them, even if it's just to read and see that you're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
In going through the process and in the situation. So one of the things too that you've done is you've self-published these, and you mentioned too that you've illustrated the book. So how has that process been like for you? Well, it's publishing and then also illustrating for yourself.
I quite kind of like the technical aspects of self-publishing and stuff. I'm reasonably good with sort of computers and things, and I'm quite good with sort of digital art and what have you. So I think probably if I was being published, if I had an agent and a proper publisher and everything, they would probably tell me to stop doing things in lots of different styles and formats, and stick to one style, one format. And I do tend to just follow the ideas. If I have a particular idea, I think, okay, that what I'd like to do now is a story in this style. And so I mean, you could see this one here this is just computer images generated using computer software. This one here is pen and ink colored in with watercolors, and that's actually the first time that I'd done sort of watercolor illustrations like this. And
Oh,
actually,
wow.
I think if you look at the pictures, because I did them in sort of chronological sequence through the book, you can
Yeah.
kind of see as I go along that I'm sort of getting more confident with the watercolor as I go along. So I think the pick, and the last one I did was the front cover, and that's probably the most confident one in terms of the sort of watercolor technique, I should think.
Yeah.
But I love that. I love trying new things and exploring. So I don't always want to do everything the same way all the time. I like to, push the boundaries a little bit and try new things as I go along. I think that makes it more interesting for me. So commercially, it's probably not the best proposition, because you probably want to have a particular style and keep selling that particular style. But what works for me is to follow the ideas and do different things.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, and appreciate you even just giving that little, like, the pros of the independence that comes with self-publishing. Yeah. And then, there's a question in here too from Mr. Ramos again, and it says, Isaiah, could you ask if he has a strategy when writing books?
It depends what you mean by strategy.
Right.
So I mean, I always write to a plan. So I've always kind of I've got the whole story in my head before I start writing. I don't always stick to it as I go along. Quite often, ideas crop up, and I will kind of incorporate new bits into the story if it strikes me as being a particularly good idea. But when I originally started writing, I used to have a great idea to start with and no idea how I was going to develop it. So I would kind of run aground. But now, I think as I've got older, I've kind of learned to have the whole story ready before I start developing it. But quite often I and this is probably part of liking to try new things. Quite often I've got the story worked out, but I haven't exactly, when I'm doing the illustrations, I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to illustrate the story. And there are bits that I think are probably going to be quite difficult to find a good way of illustrating. But I quite like that, because that's a challenge. But kind of like a blueprint I follow. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there is a set blueprint, but I do tend to, I think I do. I like a story that's got a proper beginning, middle, and end. I do tend to sort of. I think I probably favour sort of British sitcom storylines, which means that at the end of the story, you're pretty much back to where you were at the beginning, as opposed to sort of happy ever after storylines. I tend to go for something that's kind of got a sort of a circular feel to it, where you're more or less back to the beginning of the where you were at the beginning when you reach the end of the story. So in that sense, I suppose there's a bit of a blueprint.
Oh yeah, no, thank you for that question, Mr. Ramos.
Yeah, nice question, Mr. Ramos.
Yeah. And just a reminder to everybody that's joining in that today we are joined by Edward Picot out in Kent, England today, and here with us talking about his process, and of course read to us the beautiful book, The Chicken with Pink Toes. And then of course we got to talk about the other work, and then you have one more that I thought we should talk about as well before we sign off, and this one was the Goose Money Box. Yeah. So okay. Well, yes. Tell us a little bit more about this one.
Well. So strangely enough, this one was not inspired by a story from Mollie, but when I did the book, it turned out that it was. She said, "Oh, I used to do that." So this is about. This was actually inspired. I work in a doctor's surgery. And a little girl came into the surgery with her mum, and while the mum was in with the doctor, I was in reception, and I and another person that worked in reception, Jill, we were looking after this little girl called Martha. And I can't remember how we got onto the subject, but she said it was something to do with saving up. And she said she had a money box, and she said it was a goose money, but it's shaped like a goose, and you put money in it. When you put money in, it moved. And I said, what does it do? Does it fly out the window and go down to the shops and buy itself some goose treats? So that was how this story got started. And so the idea of of the Goose Money Box is that this girl called Martha is saving up to buy herself a dog. And of course, if you try to buy a dog, I don't know how much dogs cost out there, but we bought a Labrador not so very long ago, and he was like £300-500, something like that.
Yeah.
So a lot of money, and it's very difficult to save up that kind of money out of your pocket money. So she can't save enough money, and she goes to ask a goblin for help. And I'm quite keen on goblins. I like these kind of magical characters that are a bit tricksy. And so he gives her some help, but it's a tricksy kind of help. So he gives her this money box, this goose money box.
Yeah.
And although it helps her, it plays tricks on her. So when she puts money in, it does actually fly out the window. And she's I'll show you one of the pictures. This is the one where she gets really cross. There we go. Oh, I've lost it now. Hold on. Yeah. There we are. So it's there. It is flying away. I don't know if you. So can you see that?
Yes, we
It's
can.
flying. Shit, it's flying out the window, and there's Martha. Hey, come back! Goose, come back! You've got my money. So and it does actually. It goes down to the shop and it buys itself a load of goose treats. So there's an empty goose treat packet, and it gives the goose treats to all the other geese. Now this is where I live. This is actually behind my house. We've got a lake behind my house. And it doesn't have as many geese on it as it used to, but it does get geese on it at certain times of year.
Yeah.
And the geese, and they make this honk, 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 honk noise as if they're laughing at you. So the geese in this story always seem to be laughing at Martha. And this is like a view from the back window of my house where the geese in the evening fly over the field. That's quite closely based on the area where I live.
Yeah.
So anyway, she gets in the end. What happens is that the goose money box turns out to be a magic goose, and it lays a golden egg. And she takes the golden egg to the pet shop, and the man in the pet shop gives her a dog in exchange for the golden egg. So it's a happy ending in the end. But some tricks along the way that the Goblin's Goose Money Box play some tricks on her.
Yeah, no, I love it. Well, thank you for just sharing your knowledge, sharing your stories, and and for inspiring us too. I really I love the topics that you've tackled, and also just funny too.
Well, it's fun.
Yeah, thank you, and we hope to explore the others as well. But as you mentioned too, you mentioned British sitcoms in there, and then you have a character called Polly in Chicken with Pink Toes, and as you mentioned, Polly, it took me to 40 Towers.
Yeah.
Love that one. But then just before we wind up, any other work that is coming up from you, should people look forward to? Anything that is coming from the doctor's surgery or anything like that?
Well, I'm not for the doctor's surgery specifically, but I'm working. So this one is the one that I've just finished, Froggo Martin the Glass Pot, and I'm working on a new one that's following on from this. But actually, I've got a couple of books. There's a more. Hang on a minute. Let's see if I can find them. I've got one called The Treasure Beneath the Hill. That's that one there, which hasn't. So this is the sort of dummy copy of it. So this hasn't actually been published yet, but that's the next. That's the next one. After I've finished sort of serializing the Chicken with Pink Toes. This one. So this is more of a kind of Harry Potter type book, I suppose. But this has got pen and ink illustrations in it. This one.
Yeah.
Which is what I always. This is how I started really doing drawings. When I was at school, I didn't like color. I only liked black and white. And I used to do pen and ink.
Yeah.
And I was very inspired by Mervyn Peake. Do you know Mervyn Peake?
No, I don't.
He was a famous, quite famous, an author and illustrator. He wrote a trilogy called the Gormenghast trilogy, but he did lots of pen and ink. He did a version of The Hunting of the Snark, Lewis Carroll's poem, and famous pen and ink, illustrator. And I was quite influenced by his style when I was growing up. So that's coming out soon, and then after that, I'm back into Frog Almighty and doing another comic book thing.
Yeah, no, lots of work. Looking forward to all of that.
Yeah.
Edward, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to everybody online.
It has been wonderful, and to everybody that was joining in as well. Thank you for being here with us on Storytime, and we appreciate you. Appreciate your company. And please, if you have any further questions for Edward, feel free to send them our way, and I'll make sure that he gets them. And of course, we can try and get you those answers. And then, of course, too, hopefully next time, maybe we'll have Mollie to share with us how it is being part of the process. But thank you so much for being here with us. Please don't go away yet. We'll catch you on the back end. And to everybody that was joining in, thank you so much for being here. This was Storytime. Edward Picot, our guest for today, with amazing book. And of course, we read The Chicken with Pink Toes. Thank you for being here, Edward. We'll see you in a bit.
Bye, everybody.
So thank you so much, everybody, for joining in Storytime today. That was Edward Picot, and talking about his books and, of course, his process as well, and all the other things that he's created. So thank you so much for being here, and, of course, looking forward to more of his work. Thank you so much. Absolutely. And I think Edward hears you too. Thank you. No, for sure. We have amazing guests that come on the show. And of course, we do have others coming tomorrow as well. So please join in, and thank you for your questions. I've got some of his books for my students. Excellent. Thank you. We love it. And yeah, hopefully too, if there's connections to be made, absolutely happy to do that. Thank you so much for joining in. And of course, to remember that tomorrow we do have other guests that are coming on Storytime, and we'll have Jerome Pumphrey and Monica Wesolowska. They will be joining us and talking about their book, Albert in the Air. So join us tomorrow for that one. Lots of fun to be had, and looking forward to them being here. But of course, today we had Edward Picot, and we read The Chicken with Pink Toes, and of course got to talk about a lot of things, including the powerful topics that is touched on in I Am a Parsnip. So thank you so much for being here with us on Storytime. Looking forward to many more story times together. I hope that you have a lovely rest of your Thursday. I hope that it is good. I hope you're able to go outside, and of course I know that there's smoke, clearing out, but I hope that we're able to still, even if it's just to do some things. Maybe if we're going outside, just be sure maybe you're putting on a mask, or follow the health guidelines that are there. If you need to stay indoors just for today and next few days until the air clears out better, please do follow those health guidelines. Thank you so much for being here with us on Storytime. We appreciate you. And it is a special week this week as we continue to celebrate Pride, and of course, the right for all to exist and thrive. As we share these stories, we send love to our LGBTQIA+ family, and condemn the increasingly visible violence and legislation against the queer and trans community. We celebrate the rights of all to love and to live authentically. And we mean that message here at Storytime. It is an inclusive space, and that's what we hope to continue building. And please, if there are ways that we can continue to highlight every member of our community and show love, please send them our way. Let us know, give us suggestions, and we'll definitely do that. Thank you so much for being here with us on Storytime. You're all appreciated. You're all loved. Sending you hugs, and hope that you have a wonderful day today. Thank you for being here with us. This has been Storytime for today. This has been Storytime on this wonderful Thursday morning. And of course, with our guest, Edward Picot. Always appreciative of our guests making the time to be here with us, to spend time with us, taking time out of their busy schedules to be here with us and indeed share their knowledge. Thank you so much for being here. Much love from me. I'll see you again tomorrow when we're back with another exciting book, Albert in the Air, coming to us on Storytime. And of course, the treat of Jerome Pumphrey and Monica Wesolowska with us here on Storytime. Much love, everybody. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Story time with Mr. Namada. He will be starting soon. Oh, with Mr. Lamada, where all your dreams come true. Oh, he brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't leave lonely, won't you start our reading? I just can't wait to be hearing story time with Mr. Lamada. He will be starting soon. Oh, story time with Mr. Lamada, where all your dreams come true. Oh, he brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't leave lonely, won't you start all reading? I just can't wait to be hearing meteorology stories, some stories from far away, others right here in my neighborhood. Story time. Ooh. Story time. Story time with Mr. Lamada. He will be starting soon. Oh. Story time with Mr. Lamada, where all your dreams come true. Oh, he brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't live lonely, won't you start all the reading? We just can't wait to be hearing. Brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't live lonely, won't you start all the reading? We just can't wait to be hearing